21 Pilots is a musical duo. They are alternative hip hop, alternative indie pop, pop rock, alternative rock, pop rock, pop rap, pop indie, indie alternative. They did reggae one time. They did that Prodigy breakbeat thing one time. They just do loads of things. I don't really think there's like one label to throw on them. Um, I'm gonna say that I've never been the biggest fan of them, so if you're a huge fan of 21 Pilots, try not to like get really annoyed because 21 Pilots probably isn't my taste. You know, I'm not the target audience for 21 Pilots. I will say though that they have had a few good songs in the past. As much hate as they've gotten from a lot of people over time, they're kind of like this decade's version of what Fall Out Boy were in the 2000s. Very popular, very dedicated fan base who are all in their teens, a bit of an emo look to them as well, but they have so many people that absolutely hate them and detest their music. Their last album, Blurry Face, was a complete mess, although it did give them the attention that blew some of their songs into like the top 5 of the Billboard Hot 100, some of the biggest hits of that year as well, with songs like Ride, Stressed Out. And to me, Stressed Out is still probably one of their best songs, as well as Holding On To You. I still think that's great. People that hate 21 Pilots should probably go back and listen to that song, because it really is quite good. And Tear in My Heart was pretty good as well. But I can't deny that 21 Pilots have this knack of obnoxiousness in their music, to the point where they get so annoying. And yeah, Blueface just was not good overall. There were so many attempts at these random as fuck ideas, these reggae infusions. There was even this one that had like this trap beat. What the hell was that song called? It was bad. And Trench was leading up to be a completely different album. I suppose you can give 21 Pilots a credit for being diverse and having this artistic creativity and openness to as many different genres as possible, because let's say you hear one song that's from this album, you can't really say it sounds like any song from their last album. Does that make this album way better than Blurry Face to me though, as a person that really could not stand Blurry Face? I mean, not really. It's not that much better, I'm not gonna lie. This album, man, is just so uneventful and so lifeless, to the point where I can try my hardest to keep engaged with what's going on, but I find myself zoning out so many times on this album because there is just such an emptiness to the way so many songs feel. Like, there's such a lack of melody, there's such a lack of like focus in the way that these songs are crafted. Such a slog to sit through. Like, there is just barely any moments of spark or any moments of musical finesse, to me anyway. I just can't find myself enjoying hardly any of this album. It just lacks excitement. It's just one note all the way through. And yeah, I didn't like Blurry Face at all. But you know, the thing with that album was that for someone going into it new, if you weren't gonna like one song, you'd probably like the song after at least, because it would sound completely different. It would have a completely different sonic palette to the previous song. Whereas this album is like about the same runtime, but just barely shakes up at all throughout the tracks. The occasional moments of genuinely like good music just don't last long enough. Take the opening track, Jumpsuit. This meaty rock instrumental comes through. I feel like I'm listening to a completely different band, to be honest. I just wasn't expecting like this really like heavy introduction to a 21 Pilots album. It was quite refreshing to hear and I was enjoying it. And as soon as we hit into the verses, Tyler like drones on, the instrumental gets sucked away, it completely fizzles out, and we've got to listen to this guy go, jumpsuit, jumpsuit, cover me. Jumpsuit, jumpsuit, cover me. Like, I'm sure there's some kind of hidden meaning to what he's talking about here, but I just have no interest in what the hell he's talking about at this point. Like, there's this like complete like dead moment in the middle of the song as well. But, like, the instrumental just has nothing to it. It's no flavor at all. And in the final third of the song, we get this mash of like instrumentation coming together. It picks up again, and finally there's something to be paying attention to. There's this like Linkin Park-esque screaming from Tyler here. He must have been influenced by Chester on this track with the whole screaming. It's just such a like a momentous moment to cut out, to finish off the song, that it should have just been the whole song. Another good moment on the album is the track Morph, which comes a few tracks later, which has a genuinely good and strong melody to it, which I think so much of this album lacks. This nice little synth playing in the background, a pretty good hook as well. I like the chorus on this track. But yeah, this is just like a very like limited section of the album, because then you get tracks like Chlorine, which just drag on to me. And I don't know what he's on about with the friggin' chorus here. Sipping on straight chlorine, let the vibes slide over me, the beat is a chemical. Like, what the fuck is he on about? Is he trying to be profound here? Because I don't have a clue what he's going on about here. The rest of the song just has this really like soft break beat-ish thing going on. It's done on Levitate too, which I think is done to like better results, but it's still not really something that's really fleshed out in the whole of the album. You either have this like really plain and simple break beat, or there's just barely any beat to the tracks at all, or any pulse. It really doesn't help that there's just not enough urgency to Tyler's delivery on most of this album. Like, I'm pretty sure before he showed us like a singing side to him that was pretty decent and made for good choruses, but I just don't find it much on this one at all. Or instead he just ends up grating on my ears like Nico and the Niners. Like, again, mentioning this jumpsuit fucking thing. It's like on the last album where he kept mentioning the fucking radio. This song won't get played on the radio. A jumpsuit, cover me. He's really trying hard to hammer in so many points on this album where tracks end up having these like phrases and refrains repeating over and over and over. It's like Bandito, where he's like, I couldn't take the high road, so I'm going low, and he says it like 50 times in the song. And I know that like with a pop song, you know, refrains get repeated quite a lot and it can get annoying, but the purpose of it in that instance is to have a very sticky and danceable phrase that you can, you know, have fun to. Whereas on this album, that's not the purpose. So instead, it ends up being like Tyler just saying the same thing over and over again to the point where it loses its meaning. Lines with like emotional potency or whatever don't really need to be repeated over and over again. They should just be said once and left to linger in your mind to have a think about, or to go back to it and think, what did he mean by that? But when you say it over and over again, it just loses its meaning. Leave the City as well, this closing track that feels completely uninspired to me, where he's like, they know it's almost over, and he says it so many times. Like, dude, you've lost the meaning of that phrase. It could have been way more powerful as it's supposed to be the closing track, but nah, I'm just not interested when I hear it said it over and over again. It really doesn't help that the music is completely bland throughout the whole of this album. As I've already said, I mean, there are moments like The Hype, which sound quite radio pop-ish, to be honest. I guess I should expect 21 Pilots to be doing something like that, considering how they have gained that audience by this point, that they probably want something that will cross over. Even still though, I can't really get mad at them attempting to fit into that radio pop audience when it's probably one of the few times on the entire album where my ears perk up and think, oh, this track has actually quite a good melody. Sure, if you're interested in this dreary atmospheric tone that they've got throughout this album, then that's fine, but I think I need a bit more in the lyrical department for this kind of thing to work. I mean, take Earl Sweatshirt's last album, I Don't Like Shit, I Don't Go Outside, where there was just such a dark feel to the whole thing, but at least Earl was able to back it up with incredibly dark lyricism. Whereas on this entire album, I can really only pull out a handful of moments where Tyler's lyrics actually have an impact. One of the biggest ones would be Neon Gravestones, where right at the end of the song he starts talking about how we shouldn't really be giving this suicidal, depressed state of mind, this glorification that we have been doing in music for quite a long time. Not always, he's not saying that all music does this, but he's saying this should be taken out of the picture. And this stigma surrounding this, depression, this mental health major issue should never be glorified, should never be romanticized, which I actually did a video on not too long ago, so I'm totally on board with the message here. But it's just one of the few times where I feel like Tyler pens such an emotionally potent moment, whereas I feel like it just feels like it's lacking on the rest of this album. I guess it sounds like I'm being pretty negative about this album overall, but really my general issue is just my lack of interest in what's being laid out in front of me here. I guess there's really only one bad song here, to be honest, and that's Pet Cheetah, which just is mixed so poorly, like especially the last bit of the song. It just sounds like utter shite. And Legend, I guess, is just some like American authors level of like indie pop trite. It's not the worst thing, but it certainly isn't anything I can say I'd ever want to return to. But once again, I'm just unenthused by a 21 Pilots release. Occasionally good moments on the album, which I would say are enjoyable, but overall wondering how this duo has garnered so much hype over the years. When they release albums like this, it's just not really all that exciting to me. So I'm gonna go 5 out of 10. Let me know your thoughts on this album if you enjoy it. If you like it more than me, then let me know. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews. Have a good day. Jumpsuit, jumpsuit, cover me.